Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a spooky season inspired mod with me, and I'm going to be trimming the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. Now this is a very popular deck and a very popular deck mod. I am very late to the party on getting this deck and on modifying it. Now, let's talk a little bit about the deck before I jump into chopping off all the borders. I actually don't mind the orange borders on this deck. What I'm actually not a fan of is the font that is used, which is just such a nitpicky thing, right? It is a very new deck to my collection, and so I haven't done a ton of work with it, but the little bit of work I have done, this font just doesn't feel like it really fits. And the orange borders, I think, well, actually, they do fit the deck and they don't really bother me in terms of their coloring. I think it does make it feel more like a Halloween type of a deck. And I feel like because of the orange borders, I probably wouldn't be tempted to pull this deck out at other times of the year. But I have seen it trimmed down completely borderless, right? Because that's really popular to do with this deck. And it looks beautiful, and I feel like the images almost get a little bit darker, they get a little bit deeper when we kind of take away the excess that in a sense kind of competes with the imagery, because a lot of the imagery is very minimalistic, right? This is a little bit of like a pip style deck. Our Ace of Wands is just like a bonfire. And it's really cool. Like, I really like the imagery in this deck, but I feel like when I've seen it without the borders, just taken down to the artwork, it feels, like I said, darker and almost deeper. But anyway, borders can make a difference. And I do feel like the orange borders really make this feel like Halloween, which I mean is great because like it's Halloween right now. However, I do feel like I'd be more apt to use this deck year round if it didn't have the orange borders. And I also feel like I said that, you know, it just opens the artwork up and it just makes it feel like deeper. Deeper is the word I'm really looking for. Not necessarily darker, but deeper. So I'm going to go ahead and follow suit along with a lot of different people, and I'm going to take it down just to the artwork. That is going to skew the back a lot. As you can see, when I cut the title off the bottom, I am going to be cutting into that pentacle. There's just really no way around that. So like, yeah, I'm gonna be cutting into that pentacle. I've seen a lot of people reback this deck, and I did think about that, but honestly, like, it shuffles so beautifully, and you know, if you trim a deck using measurements, it still, most of the time, will still riffle shuffle well, but this deck just shuffles so beautifully that if I add contact paper to it, it's not to say I won't be able to riffle shuffle it, but it's going to be a lot thicker. It almost doubles in size when you add contact paper to it. So that does make a big difference. And I just wanted to keep it kind of small and thin and light and flexible as it is now. My backs are going to be all wonky. I don't really care. I don't really pay that much attention to the back of my cards. I don't often lay cards down like this in readings. There's only a few occasions where I do readings in this way, and that's usually when I am doing Celtic Cross, and honestly I tend to use pocket decks for my Celtic Cross, so this probably wouldn't be a deck I would use for Celtic Cross anyway, but that's about the only time that I really lay cards face down. So I'm not too terribly worried about that. I have seen where a lot of people will note the elemental and numerical association on the cards, so that they know, along with the numbers for the majors, right? So that you know what is what. I'm not going to do that. And here's the reason, because I don't particularly like to write on my cards. And when I don't write on them, I don't number them, it encourages me to get into the guidebook. And when I have a new deck, I do like to explore the guidebook. And so the guidebook does have, they're black and white, but it does have all the pictures in here. So if I come across a card and I'm not entirely sure, you know, what card it is, then I can come in here and look, and I can find the card in the guidebook. And like with any deck that I trim and I take it down completely borderless, like eventually I get to know all the cards anyway. So yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I mean, does this say Queen of Cups to me? Probably not. So that might also mean that I end up working with this deck much more intuitively. I mean, this definitely says Hierophant. Also, I've seen this card enough, and it's on the front of the book, to just know that that's the Hierophant card in this deck. Does this particularly say Nine of Wands? I don't know, we shall see. But I like a deck like this too, where when I take it down to the borders, I can use it completely intuitively as well if I want. And then I have the guidebook to reference for the tarot associations if I need them. So that's my whole like why I'm modding the deck. So let's go ahead and jump into the mod. As usual, I'm just gonna take you through little bits and pieces. This is not an actual tutorial. We're just gonna go along and mod the deck together. I will speed up and jump around so that this video doesn't run on forever, because it does take quite a bit of time to mod a deck. But if you are looking for a tutorial, I definitely have a couple of those on my channel, and I'll leave those linked in the description box below for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so making a little space. I've got my usual tools here. I've got my Fiskars trimmer. I've got my Katamora Pro corner rounder. My little triangle ruler that probably needs new tape. Yeah, it's been on here a while. And this is how I kind of create a cradle and cheat my mods so that they go quicker, easier, and straighter, which is really, really important if you riffle shuffle your decks. So as per usual with a deck mod like this, I am gonna take the two sides and the top off first, and then I'm going to take a look at the deck with the titles still on the bottom and see what I think about that. I almost always leave the titles for the end, because sometimes there is occasion where I'm looking at a deck like this and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm just going to take it all down borderless, and then once I get those three sides off and I see just the title at the bottom, I feel good about that and it ends up working for me, and I call the mod good at that point. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that with this deck as well, even though I've like said, I'm not really fond of the font at the bottom, but sometimes that works out better. And I always want to give myself the opportunity to see the deck in that configuration before I just, you know, cut the titles off completely. So I never start with the titles. I always start with the two sides, then I usually switch to the top, and then usually do the bottom last. So as per usual, I'm gonna just really throw my cards in here and start chopping away. I'm going to hope that the printing looks pretty straight on the majority of these cards. I have gone through it a couple times. There isn't anything that extends outside the border area. And I forgot my little ruler again, which I always do. I don't know why I forget that every time, because I take this and as I've mentioned a million times before, the thickness of this particular ruler is the same as the width between the guide, the plastic guide here, and the blade, so I can see pretty exact where my blade is gonna come down. And I always go slightly into the artwork. I know that kills some people, but I want to make sure I'm not getting any border left over. And occasionally, if I don't err enough on the side of caution where that's concerned, I end up having to retrim whole sides, because you can't just, you know, cut off the little bit of that one card that you got some extra on and then hope it all to be the same for a riffle shuffle. It's just not going to work like that most of the time. There's the reason that I cut all my decks in this particular way is to ensure that they are as straight as humanly possible, because that's what matters when it comes to a riffle shuffle. And I still want to be able to riffle shuffle my trimmed decks, and for the most part, I usually can. It's a rare exception to that when I can't riffle shuffle it. So I just take some washi here. I've got my card lined up where I want it, and I'm gonna just tape my little ruler down, because once I go through this step, then I'm happy with where it is. I'm just gonna cut the entire right side of the deck by just sliding the card in and out. So get that out of the way. Okay. And I do like to check and make sure that like I got my triangle ruler in there straight and all that good stuff, right? So I think I like where that is sitting. I am just inside the artwork. So I'm gonna check a couple of these. I always check a couple majors. I always check a couple minors. And then I always try to check the quartz just to make sure. And again, this deck looks good. It looks really nice and straight, which makes it so much easier for trimming. Okay, are we ready? Because here we go. As you see, I'm super precious about it. Now the backs, of course, like I said, they're gonna be all kinds of funky. I've got some border here, none up here. And is the card straight? I mean, it is, right? I can double check just to make sure. Sometimes, I mean, I got a sliver off. Sometimes I don't 100% bring my blade all the way down straight. It'll rock just slightly, and that will change. It'll shift just a little bit. So what we can do is put it up against this lip here and see. Oh yeah, see, that's not straight. So that means my ruler is not straight. So that's a big fat bummer, because now I've just cut that card and now I gotta fix it. So something is wonky. Something is wonky. Let's see about that. That does look nice and straight. But I can feel the cards hanging off just a little bit. So I'm thinking I didn't get my triangle ruler in there straight. Yeah, because there goes the excess. And now I can use this lip over here. And now it looks good. Now it looks nice and straight. So, you know, if I can pick it up here, this much off, you won't even be able to see it, but. Okay, so basically I'm gonna go ahead and just clip or chop off the whole right side of the deck. You can see I am cutting a little bit into the artwork, but again, that's just to ensure that I'm always getting all of that orange border off. Usually, in most decks, like if you're just cutting off that much a sliver of of the image, you're usually not cutting off anything super important. The only time that really becomes a big issue is if you are working with a deck that has artwork extending outside of its borders. The Gaian Tarot is an example of that. I had to trim that deck twice because, yeah, it was a difficult mod to do. I do have a mod with me on it. I don't think I modded it once and then I worked with it for a little bit and it was still too big, so I ended up making it smaller again. So anyway, as you can see, like with the little triangle ruler in there, I can just throw cards in, cut, and away I go. I don't have to worry about remeasuring. I don't have to worry about, that first card still feels wrong. Yeah, I knew it did. I could feel it. Yeah, now they all feel nice and straight. So anyway, it makes the whole process easier. I mean, I could sit here and ramble while I cut these, because now that I have all the measurements in here and I have the cradle, all I have to do is slip them in and out. But I won't, because then we'll be here forever. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish trimming the sides and the top off. I'm just gonna repeat this same process to do the other side. Once I get this whole side cut off, I'll just pop these in here, reset the measurements, move the cards, move my ruler over, and just repeat the process again. So I'm gonna go ahead and just jump forward and we'll see what it looks like with just the titles at the bottom. Okay, so I ended up putting this down because my trimmer kept slipping on my table. This is not helping a ton. It's helping a little, but not a ton. I think I need to get like an anti-slip mat because this table is much slipperier than my other table was. Okay, let's look at what we got here. So as you can see, there were a couple of cards where some card fuzz, where the titles are. Let's see if we can get that. Is it focusing? I can't even tell. My eyes are so bad I can't read it on the screen. Anyway, some of the titles are really, really close to the end, and there's a couple of them that are like, I think there's one or two that are actually cut off, which is kind of too bad because it really doesn't look that bad like this. Like, and this is a really, really nice size. Once I take these bottom titles off, like this deck is gonna be like 10 size, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a bit smaller than I thought it was gonna be. So like these ones don't look too bad. So let me just go through here and pull out the ones that had issue. So yeah, it's like really too bad they made this font quite as big as they did because there's really only three cards. There's really only three cards that, using the measurements I used, that something got cut off. So the one got cut off in the 10 for the Wheel of Fortune. The 2 and part of the S got cut off for the High Priestess. The Hangman is, like it's readable, but it's really, really close. And the Hierophant is really, really close, but like it really is, it's like really just two cards that are really bad, the High Priestess and the Wheel of Fortune. So, I mean, I could totally leave it like this because I do kind of like this size. So let's move all of this out of the way. It's not rounded, so I really don't want to like ruffle shuffle it right this 5 minutes. But let's see what happens if like those two come up on my table. I mean, does it look ridiculous? They're cool borderless because like, oh, we can make a story. Like it's a whole panorama there. It's super cool. Yeah. Like I don't really mind these ones. Let's just pull a few more. Hopefully my camera is focusing because I know I'm like putting dark things and light things and just throwing all kinds of stuff at it. It's like there's a lot of cards on the table. Let's see how that looks. Like I've taken enough of it away, but like it looks really cool without anything. Here's my Centennial in a tin. Well, it's not in a tin anymore, but it's a Centennial in a tin. Okay. Huh. So if you take it down to just the artwork, it's actually mini deck size, which like I like a mini deck. All right. I think I'm just going to do it. Like I really wanted to have it with just the imagery because I feel like it's so powerful. But I like to double check. I like to be sure because like I can't put it back once I cut it off. I mean, I can buy another deck, sure, but like I can't put the titles back on once I cut them off unless I buy another deck. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim the titles off and I'm just going to repeat my usual process. This didn't work very well. Maybe if I double it up, I'm just trying to get things to stop slipping around. I need to get like a anti-slip mat or something to put under this. But okay, let's just do it. We're gonna do it. This is what we're here to do. Yeah, it's gonna be Raven's Prophecy tin size by the time I'm done, but that's cool. I wanted to try it, I wanted to see it, so this is what we're doing. Unfortunately, it's gonna swim in the bag I made for it because, yeah, that's like super cool. The bag I made for it fits the full size, so I'm gonna have to make a smaller bag, but see, let's not talk and slide things around because that's when I get in trouble. Okay, I've got it trimmed all down completely borderless. I haven't rounded the corners yet. I figured we'd do one or two of those on camera together. It's really cool. And yeah, it does feel like once you take the titles and the orange borders off, it definitely feels like deeper, a little bit darker too, but it's more like there's this depth now within this that I feel like the orange borders just didn't really let me experience. And it is a really, really teeny tiny deck now. And to be perfectly honest, like half of these cards, I have no idea what they are. So it'll definitely be a learning experience. Here's what the backs ended up looking like. I have a sliver of orange, really, really shiny cardstock. A sliver of orange down this one side, and clearly the backs are all kinds of askew, but like I knew that was going to be the case going in. I guess at least they're all uniform that way. I could have adjusted and trimmed a little bit more off this one side to get rid of that orange, but like then I'm cutting into even more of the artwork, and I really, really didn't want to do that. And I just realized I didn't turn my lights on. Look at that. Let there be light. Okay. Hopefully now maybe you can see it a little bit better. This is like, I feel like this is newer. This is a newer edition or version or printing. Maybe that's the right word. Newer printing of this deck. And it's on some pretty glossy cardstock. Anyway, okay, so let's go ahead and just round a few and to go ahead and edge it. I am just gonna edge this deck in black using a black Tombow, and I have some paper towels here for wiping it off. I've actually been modifying decks most of today. I distressed a bunch of decks, and so that's the reason my hands look gross already. So I was like, well, while my hands are already, you know, covered in ink or ink stained, like what's the perfect thing to do on camera? Go ahead and modify a deck because I'm already a mess. Okay, so when we have small decks like this, I do tend to go for more of the smaller round, small or medium, because like it's already a small deck, but sometimes when you use the really large, the large size one, it really makes this really cool softness to the edges. And I'm kind of like debating whether I want to do that to this deck or not. I really wish it had like a title card or something extra that I could have tried that with. I mean, we can try it with one of these. So let's just pop it into the large. See, look how round that is. I don't know if it'll show up on camera actually. Let's do medium on this side. Like medium is more traditional size. So medium gets us like a pretty square deck. If I do the really, really small one, then we're getting like really squared. Like, look how teeny tiny that is. So that'll, if I do the round one, it'll basically retain the really square shape of the card and just nip off that end. If I do the medium one, I am going to be making it just a little bit more traditional tarot corner size. And if I go with the big one, the large, I'm really gonna soften that image up. And it's gonna make the deck feel more round-ish, but not be round, because like, we all know how I feel about round decks. Me and round decks don't get along. Because we can take more off, we can't put more on. Let's go ahead and start with the small, and then we'll just work our way up and see what we think. I mean, if I decide to do the large on this card, then I have to do the large on the whole rest of the deck. So that's the small, which actually is quite nice, but I feel like it's a little too squarish maybe. I don't know. Actually, it's quite fitting, I think, for this deck, but I kind of like, for whatever reason, I'm really just feeling like I want to do the big ones. So let's see how medium looks. Yeah, see, I'm liking the more rounded edge. Maybe, should we just go ahead and do the large? Like, the large is pretty cool. It's not taking that much more off. I don't know if it'll even show up on camera, but I feel like it's gonna make a difference in the way the deck feels. So let's do a couple with the mediums, which is my standard, and it's actually full. Clearly I didn't dump it after the last time I did this. Let's do a couple mediums. This is good. Is this the, I think the devil maybe? Whoops. So let's do a couple with the medium and see what we think. Let's lay them out here on the table. Like, I do like that. I think that's a really good size, but for whatever reason, I'm just really feeling like I want to do the big corners. Should we do it? I mean, at this point, I'm kind of like all in with this deck, right? I don't know. I think it's just going to give it a really interesting energy if I do the big corners on it. It's going to really round it up more. All right, we're all in. I'm doing it. Large corners, here we go. I mean, does it make that big of a difference? No, I'm just being dramatic. But yeah, I mean, it kind of does. It makes a bit of a difference. It almost makes the deck feel like zoomed in even more. Like, it's not, right? It's just, it's all an illusion. It's not. I mean, now that I've done it, I have to do the whole deck, but I kind of like it. I kind of like it. Okay. Like, yeah, I rarely use the large corner rounder unless I'm doing like oracle decks. But yeah, I think that's pretty cool. All right, since we got it out here, let's go ahead and just edge these. Like, that looks really cool. Oh, sorry. It's really like zoomed in. It's little bits of cardstock. I'm just gonna use my Tombow and I'm gonna sit here and color my edges. I like to do this while watching YouTube, generally speaking, which is probably what I will do while I do the rest of the deck. And I always run the edges around on a paper towel because, like you can see, that just came off my card. So I'd rather it come off on the paper towel than on my hands. It kind of just gets the excess off and helps it to, I feel like it helps it to dry a little bit better. Tombow doesn't take too terribly long to dry. I mean, it does take a little bit. So like, I wouldn't instantly pick up these decks or these cards and start shuffling them and working with them like right after I've edged it. I do tend to let them sit for a couple of hours. Most times actually overnight, because usually it's toward the evening by the time I actually get through an entire mod process. Not necessarily because it takes that long, but just because I tend to get interrupted and have to stop and go do other things. But yeah, it's not gonna be totally dry, but just pull these 3 cards up here. So just nice black edging. There's only 3 cards there, so you're not gonna be able to really see it. But yeah, I do. See, now that I'm here, I really, really like it. I was second guessing it, and sometimes that happens, but almost always by the time I get to the end of the mod, I'm real happy with it. I like the big rounded corners. I like all the orange being gone and the titles being gone. I don't know if I'll have any clue what anything is, but I'll learn, and that's what the guidebooks are for. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and corner around the rest of the deck, and I am gonna go ahead and edge it, let it sit and dry, and then we'll come and check back in and see the whole deck completely modified. Okay, I am all finished with my deck mod of the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. And although I had a few little misgivings here and there, I do love the way it came out. I've edged it in just black Tombow. This is actually a single coat with a new marker, and it covered really, really well. There were only a few little places that I felt like I really needed to touch up, but I think, you know, the black is perfect for this deck. It is really shiny. It just keeps catching my lights no matter what I do. But I love love the look of it now. It is a really, really cute size. Like, it's just a little bit bigger than a 10 deck, but the images are just amazing trimmed down like this. So I'm gonna be perfectly honest, like, I have no idea what most of these cards are, so I'm definitely gonna have to do some work studying this deck, getting to know it. Let's go ahead and give it a shuffle. It's not totally dry yet, so I really don't want to touch it too much, but I do just want to show you how it riffles. If it riffles, right? It's actually a great size. Again, just a little bit bigger than a 10. And it does totally still riffle shuffle, which is wonderful. And of course, overhand is just like perfection. So the backs, of course, came out completely wonky, but like, that's okay. I'm okay with it. I ended up with this little orange strip on the one side and it's not on the other. Again, that's totally okay. Let's just lay a few cards down and see what it looks like on the table. I used the larger corner rounder with this deck just to really give it a nice kind of almost softer shape, because I feel like it just really added to the energy of the deck. But yeah, I think it really, really turned out beautifully. I really like the way it looks. It's got like a really great energy. It feels like much more open, but also like the word that keeps coming to mind when I see this deck trimmed is depth. And that's really what I feel when I see these images like completely free and on their own. Again, like I said, I have no idea what most of these cards are, so I'm definitely going to be spending some time with the guidebook, which is fine. And sometimes I do that intentionally so that I will spend time with a guidebook and I will get to know what a creator had in mind for their deck. I will always, in the end, read in a way that is in alignment with how I work with the cards and how it works for my particular practice. But I do like to know what the creator had in mind when they created their images. So it's always great to spend some time working with the deck with the guidebook. But then I do often always, go my own way. I feel like this deck would be a really great deck for intuitive work, because the images do feel very intuitive, and now that they don't have any direct tarot associations or keywords or anything like that, I can really just pull these cards out and see what they have to say to me. And yeah, I'm excited to work with it. I mean, I'm excited to work with it alongside the guidebook. I'm excited to work with it a bit more intuitively and see how that works for me in that way. Like, it's gonna swim in my tarot bag though. Let me just, this teeny tiny deck in this big old bag. Oh yeah, definitely gonna have to make a new bag for it, because like that is not going to work for me. So anyway, while we're here, I'll show you the two other decks that I have been modifying today. So this is the Tarot of Haunted House, which I'm going to try not to touch too terribly much because it's probably still quite wet too. This I edged, and I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but I edged it in a deep kind of warm gray, the N49 Tombow, and then I basically antiqued it or distressed it with the Black Suit Distressed ink, which basically means I just took chunks of the deck and I rubbed it over the top of it and then wiped all the excess off. It really doesn't show up on camera. It's very subtle, but there are darkening, there's a darkness to the edges, and then throughout there's kind of this little variation of color. Again, it's still very wet, so I'm going to try not to touch it too much. But I think it matches really well with the backs. So that was the other mod that I did. And the last mod that I worked on actually yesterday and today, which still has distressed ink on it. This is the Fallen Angels Oracle. And this, as you can see, I really heavily distressed. I used the Artist Loft in Wheat as a base coat, and I did that yesterday. And then today I took chunks of the deck again and distressed it. I first put this weathered twig just over the top of the cards just to, again, distress that main wheat color. They need to be shuffled because they're still in the order in which I kind of chunked them together, so you can kind of see the lines. Once I shuffle it, let me see if this one might be dry enough to shuffle. Let's just go ahead and do it. Oh. No, it's still very wet. I really shouldn't have done that, but anyway, once it gets shuffled in, it'll merge in a little bit better. But I have the gathered ink that I just went over the entire deck with. Like I don't saturate it, right? It's distressed ink, it's not meant to saturate, but I just take it and kind of rub it across chunks of the cards, and then I wipe it off, and then I go around and do my usual where I wipe all the edges. And then I took, again, the distressed ink black soot, and I blackened all of the corners. So it gets that beautiful distress look to try and match the backs. So those are the other two deck mods that I was working on today. Clearly I need to let all this stuff dry because like it's all still very, very wet. But yeah, I just thought I'd share that with you. 3 deck mods, like these 2 because they were just edging. I didn't do them on camera, but we went through the process of trimming and edging the Raven's Prophecy. So that was a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to working with that one. Of course, these are all decks that I'm working with this month as well, so you'll be seeing them again on my channel. As always, you'll find links for everything that I've talked about here in the description box below. Thank you for hanging out with me for this mod with me. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.